She marched right up to my dock, clipboard in hand, acting like she owned the water. "You can't keep that boat here," she said, snapping her gum. I didn't even know who she was, but she spoke like she ran the whole neighborhood. My boat was rocking gently on the lake, my lake, and the morning sun was cutting through the fog. I looked at her, calm, waiting for her to realize where she was standing. Then came the kicker. "This lake is under HOA jurisdiction," she said proudly. "You're violating multiple regulations. You have 24 hours to remove that boat or we'll tow it." She even had two guys behind her, filming like they were making some HOA training video. I asked quietly, "You sure you got the right man?" She smirked. "Oh, I know exactly who you are, sir. Another rule breaker who thinks they're special." I could have laughed, but instead, I just stared at her clipboard. It had my dock's address written in red ink, along with the words, "Lake Management Violation." The problem was, there was no HOA lake management. There couldn't be, because this entire lake, every drop of water, every inch of the shoreline, belonged to me. But I didn't say that. Not yet. I just nodded and said, "All right then, we'll see." She walked off like she'd just won a war, tossing her fake authority around as if it meant something. Her little film crew followed her, laughing. As the echo of their heels faded, I looked across the calm water and whispered, "You just messed with the wrong man." The next morning, I woke up to the sound of engines rumbling near the dock. I pulled the curtain aside, and there they were. 3 pickup trucks lined up by the lake, each one with bright orange cones and tow straps hanging off the tailgate. The same woman from yesterday stood in front of them, wearing sunglasses like she was leading some official operation. She shouted, "All right, boys, let's move this junk off HOA property." I stepped outside, coffee mug in hand. "You sure you want to do that?" I asked calmly. She didn't even look at me. "Sir, you were warned. You can take your belongings now before we tow the boat. This is your final notice." The man standing next to her, some self-declared HOA enforcer, grinned and said, "We've already contacted the fishing club. They'll take it once we clear this mess." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about a rule. It was about their little fishing club. They wanted my dock space, my lake access, for themselves. They thought I was just some random guy living by the water. I said, "All right, you go ahead. But once that boat moves, make sure you know who's watching." She laughed. "Threats now? That'll just make things worse for you." The tow guy climbed into his truck, started backing toward the ramp, and that's when I pulled out my phone. I didn't record. I just opened an app, my lake property management system. With one tap, the gates across the access road locked automatically. The trucks were trapped inside. She froze. "What did you just do?" I smiled. "You're standing on private property, and you just tried to tow my boat off my lake." Her face went pale. One of her men whispered, "Wait, you own this land?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "Not just the land," I said, "the water too." And for the first time, none of them said a word, just silence, and the sound of the lake gently slapping against the dock. Her lips trembled, but pride wouldn't let her back down. "You think you can scare me with your little app?" she snapped, waving her clipboard like a badge. "I'm calling the HOA board and the county sheriff. You'll be paying fines before sunset." I almost laughed. "Go ahead," I said. "Make the call." She dialed someone, walking a few steps away while her goons watched me nervously. I heard bits and pieces of her loud voice. "Yeah, this guy's threatening us, blocking us in. Yes, the lake by Maple Ridge." I didn't move. I just leaned against the dock post, letting her dig her own hole. What she didn't know was that the county sheriff she was calling was my cousin. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up, lights flashing. She looked victorious, hands on her hips. "Finally," she said, "Officer, arrest this man for trespassing and unlawful detainment." My cousin stepped out, adjusted his sunglasses, and looked at me first. "Hey, Jake," he said casually. Everything all right?" Her jaw dropped. "Wait, you know him?" He smirked. "Know him? He's the registered owner of this entire lake, including that dock you're standing on." The clipboard slipped from her hand. But that can't be right," she stuttered. We were told the fishing club had rights to this area." I finally stepped closer and said quietly, "That club? They've been using my water for free for years, and you just gave me a reason to change that." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't?" "Oh, I would," I said. "You just tried to tow my boat off my own lake. Now let's see how your little club likes being evicted." The officer chuckled. "Looks like roles just flipped, ma'am." The news spread faster than wildfire. By noon, half the neighborhood was standing near the dock, whispering and recording on their phones. Karen, that's what everyone started calling her, was pacing in circles, trying to call someone from her board. No one answered. I stood by the water, calm as ever, while the sheriff's car idled nearby. She finally shouted, "You can't just evict us! We have rights!" I turned to her and said, "You had permission, not rights, and that permission just expired." The crowd gasped. Someone muttered, "He owns the lake?" Another whispered, "She really messed up this time." Karen's face turned red. "You're going to regret this! I'll have lawyers on your doorstep by morning." I took a slow breath and replied, "You can bring every lawyer in this state, but none of them can rewrite ownership deeds." Then I opened a folder I'd been holding, printed documents with county seals and signatures. I handed them to the sheriff. "Here's the proof: land, water, and full recreational rights, signed 20 years ago by the previous county commissioner, my father." Her expression shattered completely. The sheriff nodded, flipping through the papers. "All legal. Looks like you've been trespassing for a long time, ma'am." That's when I delivered the line that made every phone camera zoom in. "You tried to take my boat, but now I'm taking back my lake." She froze. Total silence. Even the birds seemed to stop moving. Then, as if to twist the knife, I pointed toward the sign at the fishing club's entrance. "Maple Ridge HOA fishing members only." I looked at the sheriff. "You can take that down too. Effective immediately. The club's been evicted. They've been using private property under false authority." Karen stumbled back. "You can't do this!" I leaned forward slightly and said, "You came here pretending to have power, but real power doesn't shout. It signs the deed." The sheriff tried not to smile, but I could see the corners of his mouth twitching. The crowd started clapping, slow at first, then louder, like justice itself was echoing across the water. Karen wasn't the kind of woman who gave up easy. Even with everyone watching, she squared her shoulders and hissed, "You think this is over? You embarrassed the wrong person." I didn't answer. I just watched her storm off toward her car, phone glued to her ear. 10 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up, tinted windows, no markings. 3 men stepped out, wearing badges that didn't look quite official. The kind of guys who looked like cops until you looked closer. She smirked and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're in trouble now. These are county enforcement officers. They'll handle this." The crowd started whispering again. The men walked toward me with that fake confidence. One of them barked, "Sir, step away from the dock. You're under investigation for illegal obstruction of HOA property." I tilted my head. "Illegal obstruction? Of my own land?" He raised his voice. "We can make this easy or hard." I could tell instantly they weren't real law enforcement. Wrong posture, wrong tone, no radio chatter. And when the sheriff walked up and flashed his real badge, their faces went white. "Funny," my cousin said, "I don't recall any county enforcement division." One of the fake officers stuttered. We're contracted under HOA security." "Contracted to impersonate law enforcement?" I asked. "That's a felony." Karen's mouth fell open. "Wait, they said they were real cops." The sheriff smiled tightly. "Then I hope you kept the receipts, ma'am. You'll need them in court." She started to panic, whispering fast to one of the men, but it was too late. The sheriff radioed for backup. Real deputies pulled in minutes later, sirens cutting through the tense air. As they cuffed the fake officers, I looked at Karen and said quietly, "You called for backup, but you brought the wrong army." The crowd erupted again, phones out, cameras flashing. She tried to hide her face, but every eye was on her. Then came the twist no one expected. The sheriff turned to her and said, "Ma'am, before you go, I should tell you, there's another complaint filed against you." Her voice cracked. "For what now?" He looked at me, then back at her. "Impersonating HOA authority. This lake was never under HOA control. You built your little club on lies." She froze, realizing for the first time the HOA itself was about to fall apart. Karen stood there trembling as the deputies loaded the fake officers into their cars. Her perfect little image, sunglasses, clipboard, fake confidence, was crumbling right there in front of the whole neighborhood. Phones were still recording, people were whispering things like, "She's finished," and "Did you see her face when the cops showed up?" I took a step forward, slow and calm. "You know, Karen," I said, "you didn't just mess with me. You messed with everyone who's been bullied by your HOA for years." A man from the crowd yelled, "Yeah, she fined me $200 for parking my truck in my own driveway." Another woman added, "She made us pay for that broken fence she installed herself." The sheriff nodded. "Looks like we'll need to dig a little deeper into your operations." Karen tried to defend herself. "This is a misunderstanding. We just wanted to keep the neighborhood clean." I cut her off. "You wanted control. There's a difference." Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. "See this? Every email, every fake notice, every threat you ever sent. My security cameras record sound too. You forgot that part." Her eyes widened in horror. I plugged it into the sheriff's laptop right there on his car hood. The screen filled with files, dates, photos, forged HOA documents. The evidence was bulletproof. The sheriff looked impressed. "Jake, you've been holding on to this." "Didn't want to use it," I said quietly, but she crossed a line. One of the deputies whistled. "Looks like the whole HOA board's dirty." And that's when I dropped the line that made the crowd cheer. They built their power on paper lies. I built mine on real land. The sheriff turned to the crowd. "This HOA's under investigation, effective immediately. Until further notice, all its activities are suspended." The neighbors started clapping, some even tearing up. For the first time in years, people actually smiled at each other instead of fearing another fine. Karen's knees almost gave out. She whispered, "You can't destroy everything I built." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I'm not destroying it. I'm freeing it." The sheriff closed his notebook. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us." As they led her to the patrol car, the wind picked up and the lake rippled behind me. Calm, quiet, finally mine again. As the sheriff's car pulled away, the sound of tires crunching over gravel faded into the distance. For the first time in months, the air around the lake felt peaceful. The crowd stayed silent for a moment, watching Karen disappear down the road. Then someone clapped. Another joined, and suddenly the whole neighborhood was cheering, not for me, but for what had just ended. An old man from across the lake walked up to me. "Son," he said, shaking my hand, "that woman's been terrorizing us for years. You did what no one else could." I smiled faintly. Didn't do it to be a hero. Just wanted to remind folks that nobody's above the law, no matter how loud they shout. He nodded. Still, feels like justice finally showed up. Later that evening, I stood on the dock, watching the sunset paint the water gold. The reflection of my boat rocked gently, and for the first time, it didn't look like a problem. It looked like freedom. Then my phone buzzed. A message from the sheriff. "Jake, HOA board officially dissolved. County thanked you for the evidence. Also, fishing club's charter revoked. You own full rights now." I stared at the screen for a second, then laughed under my breath. Guess I just evicted an entire fishing club, I said softly. The next morning, reporters showed up, filming from the road. Someone had uploaded the entire scene from yesterday. Karen, the fake cops, the confrontation. It was everywhere. People online were calling it the Lake Justice story. Comments poured in. That man's a legend. Finally, a veteran standing up to fake authority. This is what real America looks like. And that hit me harder than I expected. Because yes, I was a Navy vet once. I'd fought overseas for land I didn't own, and now I'd fought again for the land that was mine. I looked at the flag waving above my porch and said quietly, I didn't serve this country to be told I can't keep a boat on my own lake. The wind carried those words across the water. It felt right. The next week, the lake was alive again. Kids skipping stones, families fishing, laughter echoing through the trees. No more fake signs, no more fines taped to doors. Just peace. Real peace. I rebuilt the dock gate that Karen had broken months ago. This time, I didn't hang a private property sign. I hung a small wooden board that said, "Respect lives here." People came by to thank me, some bringing pies, others just shaking my hand. One woman said, "You didn't just win against her, you gave us our home back." That night, I sat by the lake, the sky fading to deep orange. My old boat swayed gently, the same one they'd tried to tow away. I ran my hand along the railing, remembering every moment. The fake threats, the fake cops, the lies, all of it washed away now, like ripples fading into calm water. I took a slow breath and said to myself, funny how they thought power came from rules. Turns out, it comes from knowing what's yours and protecting it. The camera I'd installed on the dock light blinked red, recording the quiet evening. I didn't mind. Maybe someone out there needed to see this. To know that sometimes standing up for what's right doesn't take fists. It takes patience, proof, and courage. The wind picked up again, carrying the faint sound of laughter from the other side of the lake. I smiled. I fought for freedom once, I whispered. Didn't think I'd have to fight for it at home. Then I stood up, looking across the shining water, the lake that was mine in every sense. Not for control, not for pride, but for peace. The screen could fade there, the sound of the flag flapping, the boat creaking, the lake calm again. Justice finally, quietly done. Viral closing line, for narration or title card. They tried to take my boat. I took back my country, one lake at a time.